Hey everyone, welcome to Locked On Lakers for Monday. Brian Kamenetsky, Andy Kamenetsky. Andy, training camp is only a week away. Let's start breaking down position groups and getting ourselves ready for Media Day. That's next.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks to everyone for making Locked On Lakers your first listen of every day, Monday through Friday. No matter how or where you get your podcasts, it's always going to be free, never behind a paywall. Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where upwards of 21,000 subscribers are all hanging out, getting themselves ready for NBA basketball, which is starting back up next week. We are only a week away, Andy, from the opening of training camp, media day, all that kind of stuff coming up. I'm really hopeful that the nice folks at BBGO are as generous as they were last year. They were really excited about that sponsorship and sent everybody home with easily the coolest media day
swag
that we've ever had. So, shout out to our friends at BBGO.
Who, by the way, if they'd like to sponsor this podcast, in addition to that little mom and pop operation known as the Lakers,
right?
We are open for business.
I will wear a jersey patch.
Hell yeah.
We can work that out with corporate over there.
Dude, I'll cover up the Locked On logo if it means we're getting more BBGO.
Sorry, David. This is just how things are now. All right,
so Locked On BBGO.
I will do. Oh my God, that would be the most delicious podcast ever.
I don't give a bleep, man.
All right, so we'll get into that in a second, but it is like it's finally here. Like, and it's a great spot, I think, as we kind of get to this point, like to kind of think about like where the Lakers are. How much more legitimate excitement, Andy, there is for this season, and how little you have to, bend and twist and squint and do all these other things to feel optimistic about what was coming. Like, because last year at this time, we were still in the like, hey, there's a week away from training camp. There's still time to do the Buddy Hield, Myles Turner thing. Like we still got time. Like, are they going to flip Russ? Are we going to really open camp with Russell Westbrook? None of that this year. It is, so nice.
Yeah, I was thinking about this, Brian, and like the last time the Lakers opened a camp feeling A, this optimistic, and B, feeling like you had a solidified idea of what the team is in the first place. And like, there's always questions to think about, factors to think about with every team heading into training camp. And there obviously are some with the Lakers that I'm sure we'll discuss during this show, if not the week leading up to training camp, during preseason, and throughout the entire season. Off the top of everyone's head, it's, LeBron entering season 21. Where's his body at? How do you manage his minutes? AD's injured, all sorts of stuff like that. But like this may be, I was trying to think about the last time it felt like heading into a season, things were this optimistic, and it felt like a team had as relatively few questions. I'm thinking maybe going back to like the Lakers looking to defend the 2009 championship, or maybe looking to three-peat, although there had been a little bit of ominous signs with Phil Jackson very seriously considering retiring. Like he really had to be talked back for the 2010-11 season, because he really was seriously considering getting out. But like just in, say, the last 4 to 5 seasons, heading into the 2018-19 season, obviously excitement about LeBron joining the team, but you had no idea what exactly it was going to look like with LeBron and all of these exciting but very unproven young players. And even the most optimistic person like me, who had always been very high on BI and Lonzo and Kuzma, Josh Hart, all those guys. Yeah, the kids. Even I thought like, okay, it's going to take some time, even if I think it could work out.
Even LeBron said it was going to take some time to work out.
Right. And LeBron made it's pretty clear, maybe
He
I
didn't
don't know, a month or so into the
TikTok,
season.
he didn't have that kind of time. Let's
He
it up
went
a little
into
bit.
it. He went into it expecting, it'll take some time, and then he about a month into it said F time.
Bleep that. Right.
I don't like time. Screw this. Get me Anthony Davis.
He was old then, Andy.
Right. And then heading into the 2019-20 season, there had been all the chaos leading up to that. Luke Walton getting fired, Magic abruptly resigning, saying that Rob Pelinka is a snake, trading for Anthony Davis, which had been on the heels of the midseason attempts at that got super ugly and awkward. Frank Vogel gets hired, clearly not the first choice of the organization. Like, not even, he was at best
or the third.
He was at best their fourth choice.
Yeah.
At best, their fourth. They end up winning a championship, but then 2020, 2021 doesn't even feel like a normal excitement you're defending a championship season, because it was such a condensed offseason because of the bubble. Things were still weird because of the period they were in. The Lakers brought in a lot of new faces to try to offset the fact that they had just played this long run. So you didn't quite know what that team was. Heading into 21-22, it was Russ. And then heading into 22-23 was
and it was Westbrook and a lame, let's make Frank Vogel a lame duck.
Yeah. And then heading into 22-23, it was Russ. You know what I mean? Like,
and Darvin. You had a new coach.
Yes.
You still got Russ.
This feels like, for the first time, again, maybe in like 13 years, that it feels like what the team is.
Mm-hmm.
And you have an idea of what it's going to look like. You have an idea of how the pieces fit together. It's really exciting and fun.
It is. It's the reason why, for people who are the everydayers who were, caught it last week, or maybe you missed it, maybe you, like other people, are getting that last bit of time in before you devote all of your time and energy to things like this podcast and keeping up with the NBA season. And we talked about this idea of like why the Lakers are exciting and they are really good, and there's a ton of reason to be enthusiastic about them, but they're not intriguing in certain ways, because I agree with you. I kind of feel like I understand what they are, and LeBron's got to stay healthy. Anthony Davis has got to stay healthy. Like, obviously, and those are big ifs, and how you manage those periods are going to be, tricky. Like, I don't know exactly what the upside is going to look like. There's always going to be surprises about who performs well, which combinations you think are going to work that don't, and some that you might not think of that do, and all of that. I'm not saying they're not interesting, but I just sort of feel like I understand what they are. Whereas I look at other teams around, I'm like, what is the ceiling for the Oklahoma City Thunder? Are the Memphis Grizzlies a team that is going to maintain what they did last year? Or is there real trouble there? A tough offseason for Jaren Jackson Jr. after the World Cup, and obviously everything going on with Ja and all of that. But great young team, good organization, I think a great coach in Taylor Jenkins. And they just brought in Marcus Smart. Like, what does that look? There are a lot of teams that are just...
Denver's the defending champions.
Yeah.
They are thin with really proven talent. Like, their starting five is fantastic, but losing Bruce Brown is a big deal. In his own right, losing Jeff Green was kind of a deal in terms of who ended up playing during the playoffs. Christian Brown, I know they're high on. There's optimism with him there, but there's still things to figure out with Denver, including how do they react to being the hunted and getting every team's best shot. Other than KCP, nobody on Denver knows what that's like. You and I have covered enough championship teams to know that's a big deal.
It is. So let's look a little bit at sort of around the roster. You talk about sort of the difference from last year to this year. Perhaps the most stark example of that is in the backcourt. So we'll take a look at the guards, and later on today, why Christian Wood shouldn't Saturn. I think I found a typo in our card. So I'll get to that next.
Locked On Lakers is brought to you by DoorDash. Are you missing syrup for your pancakes? Run out of your favorite coffee creamer? Burnt that last piece of bread, you want it for toast. The avocados have gone bad. They always go bad. Avocados are really tricky. Your hot sauce bottle is just unexpectedly empty. With DoorDash grocery delivery, you get what you want right when you need it. Stock up for the week or order last-minute cravings conveniently. You've trusted DoorDash to deliver your restaurant favorites, and now you can get high-quality grocery delivery too. With thousands of grocery stores to choose from, you will find the best in your neighborhood and boost your local economy with every order. So just sit back, enjoy quality groceries like you picked them yourself. And if you want even more value, you can save on all your grocery and restaurant favorites with a free delivery fee, nothing, zero, no dollars whatsoever on all eligible orders with a Dash Pass membership. Get 50% off your first DoorDash order up to $20 value when you use the code LOCKEDONNBA at the checkout. Limited time offer, terms apply. Again, that's 50% off up to $20, no minimum subtotal, and zero delivery fees on your first order when you download the DoorDash app in the App Store and enter the code LOCKEDONNBA. Don't forget, that's LOCKEDONNBA, the code for 50% off your first order with DoorDash.
All right, so we'll get to these position groups here in a second, starting with the guards here. But this made me laugh. For people listening last week, we talked for a few minutes about Patrick Beverley and his advice. This, I believe, was Friday's show, right, Andy?
I think so.
Pat Bev's comments on the Pat Bev podcast about how he told Vanderbilt to turn down that extension with the Lakers because you get paid more, you get overpaid when you get into the offseason. Like, you get, in season extensions, you get paid fairly. Off season, you get overpaid. So he told,
for that matter, he thought D'Angelo Russell settled for too little.
Yep. So he's like, he should have, shouldn't sign the deal. This is before it was even offered, I think. This from the YouTube page, WM Cuccia, or maybe William Cuccia, I'm not sure. 1356 says Dennis Schroeder must have listened to Pat Bev when he turned down 4 years and $85 million with the Lakers. So that made me chuckle, and I thought was worth being mentioned on the show. So please keep the questions and comments coming. We do love to use them whenever we can. So at Cam Brothers, the YouTube page, CamAnetskyBrothers@gmail.com, lots of ways to get a hold of us. So like I said, I don't think there's a place on the roster where the contrast between what they were working with going into last year versus what they've got this year is more stark than the guards. And it obviously starts with Russell Westbrook, obviously, but it really goes much deeper than that. I mean, they have completely turned over that guard unit.
Yeah, I mean, Russell Westbrook was one of the guards on the team to begin last season. Patrick Beverley, point guard / agent, was one of the other guards opening. Well, he actually didn't open the season. Was he hurt? I think he was hurt to open the season. I thought
he's on the roster, though.
Right, sure. I'm just thinking about the guys who were literally starting for the team. Austin Reaves at the time, was considered promising from that rookie season, but you're also wondering like how much of that was just garbage team. Somebody has to do something. We were excited just to see somebody do something nice at all.
He wasn't what he is now.
You're right, exactly. Kendrick Nunn was one of the guards on this roster.
We were really excited about.
Scottie Pippen Jr. may have actually been on the opening night roster getting minutes. Lonnie Walker, who was at the very best an upside flyer, and Lonnie was fine, but he was not great. And quite frankly, I don't think Lonnie would be stealing minutes from D'Angelo Russell, this version of Austin Reaves, or Gabe Vincent.
Yeah, completely.
And that doesn't even take into account Max Christie and the role that I think he's going to have with the team moving forward. And I think the organization is earmarking in pencil, if nothing else, for him to have this season.
Pippen, by the way, it should be noted, it was one of the Exhibit 10 deals that the Lakers signed. So he's still connected to the organization, seems very likely to be on the G League team this year. He is really undersized and not a tremendous athlete. And so it's hard to see like a big future there for him. But yeah, I mean, you're talking about the only guys who are holdovers from that position group are a different version of Austin Reaves with different expectations and certainly a very different contract. And then, Max Christie, who was, a 19-year-old rookie. So, you look at it now and you're talking about Russell and Gabe Vincent and Reaves as your foundation of your top three guards. And then you look past it. And what I really like about this group, Andy, is whether you're talking about, Demoy Hodge on a two-way, or Christie, who we can talk a little bit more about here in a second, or Jalen Hood-Schifino. There isn't really any impetus for the last guys I named, other than, I guess, Christie, to contribute. And even now, like they have enough depth that while I think they are a significantly better team, if Christie can play like a legitimate 15 minutes of NBA, not just like, ooh, that's pretty good for a young guy, but like he's contributing. Like those are good minutes by any standard. Like that is a potentially transformational thing in the rotation, but they have enough depth to absorb it if he's not quite ready.
Well, I mean, they're going to be looking potentially at Cam Reddish, like to get an opportunity there. I mean, he is swingmanny in that way between a 2 and 3. And I think if Christie wasn't working out and Jalen Hood-Schifino either isn't ready or you don't think he works alongside Gabe Vincent off the bench, which I think actually could be a possibility. And I don't consider Taurean Prince really a 2-guard option. I mean,
he's a 3.
Right. Other than the spacing that he provides with shooting, he really functions more like a power forward than a shooting guard.
Correct.
I think if you had to slot him one or the other.
Absolutely.
Reddish could potentially get opportunity or a look. I think it's going to be difficult for Reddish to crack rotation minutes if everybody else plays at the level that you either expect or just think they will. But what's interesting about that is, in a lot of ways, Cam Reddish is this season's Lonnie Walker, except the expectations and necessity for Reddish are far lower than Walker. I mean, like even last year when you and I weren't quite sure where Walker fit in the rotation, which is why we weren't particularly high on it as a use of the Lakers mid-level exception, you still could see a clearer path for Walker to get minutes. You had seen, I think, if nothing else, a little bit more consistency from Walker than you've seen from Reddish over his career.
Oh, yeah, I think so. I mean, and look, Reddish, for reference, played about 20% of his minutes as a 2 last year, 70% as a small forward, and 12% as a power forward. So he's spent almost as much time as a power forward.
Yeah.
Positionless basketball, so on, so on. The year before that, 99% of his time was at small forward. Before that, 85% at small forward.
I think he's an option if things are going really poorly.
What it is
I don't think he's a great option, though.
No, I don't think he's a great option. You go back to the. I have long been confused by the obsession with Cam Reddish from the organization, just because it just hasn't worked. Like a lot of people have given him a lot of opportunities because it seems like it should on paper, and it hasn't. But even with Reddish, and we'll probably talk more about him when we get to the forwards groups, they don't need him to be good. And this is one of the things that I do think is nice about the Christian Wood signing is, like, I'm pretty sure Wood is, assuming they can find the right combinations and the playable things around what I realize we're getting away from the guards here, is it takes guys like Reddish and Jackson Hayes and whatever, and makes it less important that these guys who have not been particularly productive in their NBA careers, they're young, they have potential. I get it. And I don't have a problem with the signings, but you don't want to put them in a position where, like, Jackson Hayes before the Christian Wood signing was either going to need to be good, or we would limit the Lakers in what their options were if he wasn't.
That's when people were talking about. That's when people were talking about Colin Castleton possibly being the backup center.
Right. I really don't. There's no superstar in this. The Lakers are not built around superstar guards. Their superstar guard, if you want to think about it, is LeBron. But it's a nice, that top 3 is a nice one, and then you throw in terms of starting guards with Russell and Reaves fit really nicely, I think, with what they're trying to do. And then Gabe Vincent behind that. It's just a solid, I think, relatively predictable trio of players with complementary skill sets that if I was Ham and the coaching staff, I would be very pleased to be coaching.
Yeah, let's break really quick. And then when we get back, there's one last thing I wanted to bring up just that I'm looking for with the guards before we get into this question about Christian Wood.
Yeah, do that next.
So one of the things, Brian, that I think is going to be really interesting to watch this season is D'Angelo Russell versus Gabe Vincent in terms of starting roles versus closing roles.
Yep, absolutely.
And I think D'Angelo Russell, unless he has either a really bad training camp, or I guess Gabe Vincent just crushes training camp, or they just make a logistical decision that they feel like they want, say, D'Angelo Russell and Christian Wood together off the bench to be just there is no team in the league that can keep up with our bench scoring. We are going to turn our bench into something that steamrolls and actually builds the leads that hopefully our starting unit builds. I would be very surprised if D'Angelo Russell
defensively challenged group you're talking about.
But that's where Max Christie and Taurean Prince and I guess maybe Jared Vanderbilt make their money, or Rui, whoever. But save some type of scenario like that. I think it is pretty much set in pen that D'Angelo Russell is going to be the starting point guard for this team. But I think there's a very good chance that Gabe Vincent could be regularly the point guard closing games, unless the Lakers are in need of more scoring to try to get themselves back into a game down the stretch, because D'Lo's a more dynamic scorer than Vincent. More often than not in crunch time, defense, I think, can swing games more than offense, and Gabe Vincent is just the more established, reliable defender than D'Lo. And I think that's just going to be a fascinating dynamic to watch.
I mean, in some ways, I think a lot of that is really up to D'Lo in some ways. Like,
sure,
how well do you hold up defensively? Because I agree. I mean, short of slashing Darvin Ham's tires on the way out of the facility at the beginning of training camp, I would be very surprised if he wasn't the starter. I think it'd be frankly kind of a mistake. It's like, just because the rest of Lakers Nation believes that D'Angelo Russell needs to be on his way out the door doesn't mean you have to actually facilitate that process on the third day of school by making a move like that. I am also not as devoted to Vincent as I think a lot of other people are. I think it's a great signing. I love the money. I love it, and I love him as a backup point guard. A very good backup point guard. I think D'Angelo Russell's a better player. This is really where the combinations come into play. Like, how I know there's coming out of the World Cup. There's some people wondering about Austin Reaves' defense. I'm not worried about it, because at the NBA level, by most measurements, as good as we are at figuring this stuff out, Reaves was a plus defender, especially in a team context. I certainly don't worry about other opposing offenses tilting everything they do to try to somehow take advantage of Austin Reaves in the post. I feel like if that's what they're going to do, God let them. I mean, because that's not what, I guarantee you, that's not what they normally do. So, I mean, I think when you start to find these other combinations, as whether that's Hachimura as a closing player, whoever else you might see there, you're putting it in a position where Russell doesn't have to be great. He needs to be good enough. And that for me is that's why I say, can you, D'Angelo Russell, be good enough to finish games? Because I think if you can, to have that balance around the floor, and if Vincent is out there hitting like he was in the playoffs, this is a different conversation. But just based on their regular season track records to this point, if you can make it work with D'Lo, I think you are going to find a better flow late in games. Because while I agree with you, defense can tilt. It is hard to grind your way through every fourth quarter, the last 5 minutes, when it's hard to get buckets. And you put Reaves on one spot, Russell in another, you've got LeBron, you've got AD, and you've got somebody like Rui Hachimura. potentially. That's a pretty brutal group to cover.
Right. I mean, that's part of the reason why I think Vincent could end up okay, because I think the other options out there could make it so you don't really struggle to put up points. And it's not like Vincent can't score. I mean, it's not like he's incapable. I mean, I believe he's coming off a double-digit scoring season.
He's not a dynamic scorer in the
no,
he's Russell is.
He absolutely isn't. But
I think
with
Russell
the other,
is probably a better point guard.
I would agree
in terms of ball movements. I just think he's a better player.
No, that may be true. Again, that may be true. But when you also take into account who some of the playmaking options that could be out there, including LeBron, Austin Reaves, there could be other guys out there where ultimately, again, the defense, which I think often becomes more critical in crunch time than the scoring, I think it can make a difference. If nothing else, I think coaches tend to covet that reliability defensively more than the explosiveness offensively. But we'll see. I mean,
I think that's where the can Russell make himself reliably predictable?
Sure.
If nothing else, we'll do this Wood thing. You think there's any real chance Hood-Schifino has a role this year? I don't. Short of guys getting hurt.
No, short of guys getting hurt. I don't. And that's fine.
But you didn't talk. I mentioned to talk about. You didn't really get a chance to talk about Chris. We can save Wood for tomorrow. What are you expecting from him? Because I know you've talked a lot of when you talk about his role and how good you think he could be.
Hood-Schifino?
No, Max Christie.
Max.
What is it that you're looking for? What is your expectation of the role you think he's going to play? Presumably as a sort of a primary backup for Reaves and potentially sliding down to the 3 sometimes too, depending on the lineup.
3-point shooting, defense, defensive rebounding. Those are things that we saw signs of him being good at during his rookie season, saw signs of, not even signs of it, just actual tangible proof of him being outstanding of it during Summer League.
Right.
And even acknowledging Summer League competition is not NBA competition, there is a path that you want to see from second-year players when they are in their second time around in Summer League. It's you want them to be one of the best players on the floor.
Yep.
And, rookie season, Max Christie was frankly kind of a mess during Summer League. I didn't care because that's often what happens with rookies, even really good rookies.
Yeah.
So
he was a particularly young rookie.
Right. He was a very, very young rookie, but even a lot of, lottery pick rookies struggle during Summer League, and it ends up being just fine. Case in point, Brandon Ingram, his rookie season, had a pretty bad Summer League. You and I were higher on him during his actual rookie year than a lot of other people, but second year, his Summer League, he played 2 games there and decided, nope, we've seen enough. Kid's going to be just fine. Turned out the kid was just fine. Max Christie, to me, is progressing in a direction that I think is very promising. I love a lot of what he brings in terms of size and physicality. He's very confident. He is, by all accounts, extremely coachable, works his ass off. I think he's very mature for his age. And I've just heard from enough people that they like what they've seen. And, last year, Christie played a fair amount in the first half of the season. And, the team was not winning. And ultimately, when they made all those moves, Christie pretty much stopped playing because of the circumstances of having more experienced players. And also they were trying to make a play-in push where they were really battling the odds. And most coaches, including Darvin, will not want to put a player out there with Christie's inexperience. I have no problem with Ham doing that at all. But I wouldn't have minded Christie continuing to play because more often than not, I didn't think he gave many reasons to take him off the court.
Yeah,
I don't think he did.
I think for the way I look at it is this way. I mean, when you start to break down, on-off impact, net ratings and things like that, there was often, I think a lot of Christie's stuff is wow, he's really holding up well compared to both what he was in Summer League, which was, I agree with you, a hot mess. But also I think sort of being graded on the curve of kid's 19 years old, just turned 20 or whatever it is, depending on what you're talking about. And he's showing that he has NBA skills. And that's really cool. What you could see this year is sort of like an NBA version of what you look at in Summer League, where you start to take away that curve from like he's doing good for where everything in parentheses is for a second round pick who's 19 years old and it isn't expected to play and all that stuff too.
Yeah.
He's just playing well. Not he's one of the 5 best players in your rotation, but he is worthy of playing time as your 8th, 9th, 10th guy. Because again, that's like trading for a player to have that kind of development. And then he puts it on, this. And to do that, to the significance of him playing well in Summer League as a kid who still has not turned 21 is different than somebody like Castleton playing well in Summer League at 23, where you're older, you're more mature, you have grown into your grown-up body in a way that Max Christie has. And I don't want to diminish what Castleton did in Summer League because it was pretty impressive. But if at 23 and stuff, he looked wildly overmatched, it was going to more an indication that Castleton wasn't going to make it.
Right.
And so I think it was a smart, same with Hodge. Like the Lakers kind of picked ready-made dudes with those two-way slots, but it's a different deal than Christie. So
absolutely.
Let's save this Wood thing and why he should not Saturn for another show. It's in response to another question and comment that was left on the YouTube page. So
for people who can't see this, it's supposed to be why Christian Wood shouldn't start.
I think they figured it out. Oh, right. Not everybody can see it.
Right.
Some people are listening, Andy, the old-fashioned way. Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you can go to see my typos and also hang out with upwards of 21,000 subscribers. Leave us questions, leave us comments, trying to set up some good guests for the week as we get towards training camp. We'll see everybody tomorrow.